Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the session on rail transport, the game changer in Malaysian transport, let me sincerely say well done to KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific for organizing this National Transport Summit during these challenging times for the industry on a global scale. The transportation sector, which is diversified infrastructure, is, in my opinion, a spark for the economic growth of a nation and its success. Before we hear from the speakers, can I have everyone here silent their phones? Each speaker will talk for 12 minutes, after which I'll open the floor for questions. When asking questions, it would be good if you could identify yourself and your organization. Okay then, let's hear from our first eminent speaker, Mr. Mohammed Ashri bin Matsar, President and Group CEO of Prasarana Malaysia Berhad. He is passionate on maintaining high standards in public transport and its safety. Shall we go ahead? Yeah.
Everybody, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to convey my utmost appreciation to the organizer, KSI Strategic Institute, for the invitation to speak today. Also to Tan Sri Michael Yeo for the invitation to invite me to speak on behalf of Prasarana about our plans and initiatives about public transport. I'm given 10 minutes to give a presentation today, and I hope to give you a rounded view of Prasarana, its initiatives, and our plan to improve public transport in Kuala Lumpur. Firstly, as a start, if I may, and just to get everyone on the same page, what is Prasarana and what does it do? It is a company under Ministry of Finance Incorporated to drive the transformation of the nation's public transport systems. It was set up in 1998, but in 2002, it then acquired the strategic assets, what we call at that time, Star and Putra LRT, and also the bus services in Kuala Lumpur. And then we also set up Rapid KL to drive the operations of those companies, of those services. I think today, Prasarana is the owner, developer, and operator of multiple rail lines, LRT Kelana Jaya, LRT Ampang, monorail, and also LRT Shah Alam when it is ready at the latest in January 2025. We also run bus services in Rapid KL, about 2/3 of it in KL, Kuantan and Penang, and also BRT Sunway, the nation's first electric bus vehicle public transport system in the country. Looking ahead for the future, and I'm glad my good colleague Datuk Zarif is here as well. I'm sure he will explain more on MRT later. We are running or operating MRT Line 1, Kajang Line, and eventually when it is ready, MRT Line 2, and hopefully also MRT 3 when it's approved by the government. We are also involved in the RTS project in Johor, linking Bukit Chaga to actually Woodlands in Singapore. It's a 4-kilometer line that will eventually transform the transportation between those two cities, or Johor Bahru and Singapore. Those two states, or those two areas, Tambak Johor, is probably the most congested interchange or transfer between two countries. And hopefully when RTS is ready at December 2026, we'll see a much needed change in people's movement. Oops. Yes. In that regard, while we operate also as a rail and bus operator, we have a mandate to actually improve our revenue. And in this regard, a subsidiary company called Pride, has been set up to actually increase our non-fare revenue. It is very important, as you all well know, public transport is not necessarily, or it's not a commercial arrangement. It is a public service. It is a social service that is meant to give services to the rakyat and to the people. So in that regard, our Pride as a company has been given the task to actually implement many lands that's been acquired under railway scheme to build transit-oriented development. At the moment, under our LRT extension project, we have acquired 10 lands, and 10 developments has been defined and has specific initiatives to improve livability in the area. One of the more major ones is the ones in Ma'ara Damansara, in Brickfields, that we hope to change the areas around the station. This is an important part because as we are unable to cover our operational losses, which runs by the hundreds every year, getting a recurring income stream through this development and through getting our cash in kind or benefits in kind, it will help us to alleviate some of the operational losses that Prasarana suffers on a daily basis. But I see this much more than a commercial arrangement. I see Prasarana as having the mandate to actually work with local authorities, either with DBKL or many other local authorities, to improve livability in the area. Now, in the age of pandemic, obviously people ask, will cities remain the same? Will density become the norm? That is a difficult question to answer. But you look at historically, cities remain the microsome of whole society. And my view, eventually when the pandemic recovers or we're out of this situation, then cities will become a nucleus for growth. And in that nucleus for growth, we need not only to have a great rail transportation, a rail and bus transportation system, but to build development around those areas. So we make it easy for people to move around, do their business, meet their families, run their daily lives as efficiently and effectively as possible. And that's why we see the transit-oriented development, where people live nearby rail stations, would be a great catalyst to that agenda. Oops, I seem to be going back on my slides. Can someone control the slides for me, please? Next slide, yes. Before I go into specifically about Prasarana and its agenda, we are always related to the government's own policy direction. In RNK 12, public transportation is identified as a key enabler. We have identified a modal share of 40% by 2030, which is a big, big target. At the moment, the modal share in Kuala Lumpur, or even what we call Klang Valley, is lower than 20%. You compare to the other big cities of the world, whether Singapore, whether London, or whether any other great cities, normally the modal share is above 60%. So we have a huge, huge task on our heads, on our hands. We are also related and thankful to the government for supporting public transport. They are providing what we call a budget of 115 million for a ticket price of 50 ringgit for all Malaysians to take public transport unlimited for a month. That is an important initiative on our side, taking into account a lot of our customers, a lot of passengers are B40s and M40s who find the effects of the pandemic hard on their income. So the government has given us the subsidy to ensure that ticket pricing are as low as possible. I like to highlight this intent of having modal share by 2030. In our view, reaching that target is not only about setting up the infrastructure or providing the bus services. It needs a holistic view of government planning, where essentially is that we need to local authorities. One, obviously to build a TOD, a transit-oriented development, but secondly, making sure that our first and last mile is optimal and really make it efficient and effective for the user. The constraints of us, and I'm sure quite a lot of us here struggle with that, how do you get from your home to the nearest bus station or to the nearest rail station? That is the dilemma that we face every day. Of course, in some European countries, you would face, the weather is quite, what I would say, comfortable, although the winter is very cold, but you can walk. In Malaysia, you walk at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It's humid and hot. I think those are the constraints that we face, and how do we then address those issues moving forward? Next slide, please, if you can. These are some data that we are providing in terms of the lines. On the top is the rail lines that we operate, Kelana Jaya Line, Kajang Line, Ampang Line, and Monorail. What I like to highlight is that pre-pandemic, our ridership, total bus and rail, was 1.3 million a day. In 2020, when the pandemic hit us, it reached to a low of 500,000 a day. At the height of the pandemic in 2021, it reached only 300,000 a day. or even less in some days. That impacts us tremendously, not just in revenue, but in terms of movement of the cities. But as we see now through the Plan Pemulihan Negara, that we see that economy is starting to grow, that we see many businesses are starting to build back their growth, and our ridership in January has gone up to 500,000. We are seeing the effects of Omicron, and that led to more people working from home, but hopefully with the assurance by our team that we ensure our sanitization, our safety standards are kept high, that we'll be able to convince the public to take public transport again. On the bottom part is the bus, and we run multiple bus services across Klang Valley, and we operate about 1,000 over buses, and that is also hard hit by the pandemic. At its lowest, at its height, we reached nearly 300 over 1,000 per day for buses. At its lowest, below 100,000. So we're ramping up our services, and we're increasing our frequency as best as we can. What is critical to note here is that bus services is caught in a dilemma. The dilemma is we are caught in the same roads as other cars. Now, unless the public authorities, local authorities, make the change to actually have bus lanes, we will be caught in the same rut that we face every day. So at the moment, we're working DBKL to be able to then actually improve public lane, bus lanes, and public services. Next slide, please. I guess that note means I have a few more minutes. Thank you. This is just a graph to show how it is. We've covered in a million passengers. But the highlight is that what we see at the future. Obviously now, it is hard to see how situation is going to evolve in the next few years. But hopefully, we can recover back to our pre-pandemic level by Q2 2023. We've seen many cities has recovered as the economy grows and the government opens up the sector, and they're able to recover nearly to 80% of where they were pre-pandemic. Our hope is that things will recover soon. This year we reach 80%, and by next year we reach back to 100%. Next slide, please. One of the more important and tragic situations we faced was last year, and I'm sure everybody would recall on May 24th May 2021, we had the incident where two trains collided. It was a dark mark in the Prasarana history and public transport history, and we promised ourselves it will never happen again. Through the Ministry of Transport Investigation Committee, they've identified 23 initiatives that were meant to ensure it does not happen again. 5 are short-term, 11 are mid-term, and the rest are long-term. We have implemented all short-term and mid-term initiatives, and we reported back as such to the Ministry of Transport. One of the key things we realized is that the capability of our staff at the OCC, Operation Control Center, and our TOs, which are called technical officers on the ground driving the trains, are extremely important. And it's a part where we promise to make improvements in the SOP, but also in the competency of our staff. The idea is that, or the intent is that, the incident shall never happen again in Malaysia. Next slide, please. The next few slides are just to highlight what is the future. And the future for us is bright. At the moment, Prasarana is developing LRT 3 line, which we call LRT Shah Alam, which links areas from Klang, Bandar Bukit Tinggi, right up to Shah Alam, near the university, right up to Petaling Jaya, and eventually up to Wan Utama. It links up to 2 main rail lines, which is Klang Jaya line in Glenmary, and also with MRT line 1, MRT Kajang line in Wan Utama. And this important line, reason being is that it passes through, or it covers the area where people take the Federal Highway. Ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, Federal Highway is very likely the most congested highway in the country. And hopefully, when this line is ready in 2025 at the latest, we will be able then to reduce some of the congestion where people take public transport to go to KL, or areas within PJ, Shah Alam, or eventually in Bangsa, where they link up with KL Central. Next slide, please. We have another line coming up, MRT Line 2, which I and Datuk Zarif, my good colleague, is working hard to make sure we operate it as soon as possible Final timing for operations are still being discussed, and I'll let the details, Datuk Zarif present his presentation. Also on RTS, where MRT Corp is the infrastructure developer, Prasarana has a joint venture with SMRT of Singapore to operate the trains and build the systems. As I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, this 5.3 or 4.4 point-to-point station or line is important as a transformative agenda to help build those two cities' connectivity. One thing to highlight here is that as we build RTS, it's not just about building a rail line between those two cities. At the moment, Prasarana is working with IRDA, the local Iskandar Development Regional Authority, to build a comprehensive master plan on public transport that connects all the areas in Johor to this RTS. Because we know for a fact, a lot of Johorians either work there, being schooled there, or go about daily activities, while promoting tourism from Singapore to come and visit JB. So these two or three, what I would say, major projects will be a catalyst for the country and will be a big enabler for us to reach modal share of 40% in the future. Next slide. What I would like to highlight is that what we do to ensure safety of our passengers during pandemic. My apologies. And I'd like to highlight that we have taken steps amongst our staff and also to our passengers about ensuring vaccination, ensuring that sanitization, ensuring that we are able to clean all our facilities as much as possible. In that regard, we believe that safety is an important factor that helps us gain the confidence of the public for the future. I think it's very important for us to give confidence to the public that only it's safe to take public transport to avoid any infection possibilities or risks, but also to know that they are safe while running the train services. I know that incident has actually created some concerns among the public, but on our part, we're doing our best to make sure that the learnings from that incident in May and also improvements for the future, and we are getting an external consultant, an international engineering firm, to help us identify further areas for improvement. So I think in this regard, these are some of the things that Prasarana has identified as major issues, major development areas for us. Next slide, please. For the future, and I'll ask for just 5 more minutes to finish my slides. What we see in the pandemic is that we see 5 core areas of concern. One is uncertain market recovery. We don't know when the pandemic will end, and that will certainly impact us. We don't know whether there'll be new virus mutation coming up. Number 2, our revenue is at high risk because running public transport is a high capital infrastructure and high operational infrastructure capital. We need to find a way to increase our revenue or reduce costs. Changing customer behavior, a lot of people are working from home. And again, we don't know how this will pan out for the future. A lot of companies have actually said, we are okay if our staff work from home totally. And that, from a ridership point of view, is a concern. The growing importance of digital and sustainability, that's very important. We're well aware of last year, COP that was conducted in the UK, and how we want to align to that agenda. And number 5, elevating our competency. I just have to highlight on point number 4, which regard digital and sustainability. We have received our board approval to look into the purchase of changing all our buses to electric bus by 2030. Prasarana has more than 1,600 buses running across many cities in Malaysia, and the intention is that as part of government's net zero carbon emission and sustainability agenda, SDG, that we're committing to that, and we're working with various parties to find the best way forward in purchasing those electric buses for the future. Next slide, please. This is our future for Prasarana, and it's quite a lot to take in, but I just to highlight one thing actually. And in terms of what our agenda is. If before we are known as a company that provides transportation from point A to B, we now believe that we are now a transit ecosystem player. So mobility is an important agenda for us, giving that rounded experience from your plans for your journey, purely not just from point A to point B, but from your planning, what you intend to do for the day, even engaging you on areas of interest to visit, or things to buy, or food to eat, is something that Prasarana envisioned for us to be in the future. It's a big task, It is not easy, but it is certainly a worthwhile effort for us to try. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and this forms what I would say the backbone of the house that Prasarana refers to as our strategic viewpoint. At the end of the day, we will be judged by how well our services are taken up by the public. So the agenda of 40% modal share by 2030 is an important agenda for us. Number two, we want to be a sustainable end-to-end transit and mobility system enabler. That means that it moves beyond just a transit player or transport player to become a mobility player. So in that regard, we are talking to Grab to give services of first and last mile, which we know has been a pain point for the passengers. We have the 6 pillars, and I mentioned that before, either service reliability, health, safety, and environment, customer experience, which is very important, building partnerships, as I mentioned about Grab, digital innovation, we talk about driving new things, and also sustainability, and I mentioned about EV. One part I like to highlight is about the customer experience. And we know that as we aspire to become a reliable and respected transport player or mobility player, we must enhance that customer experience, that when you come to our stations, the experience starts not just at the stations, even while you plan for it. And such an intent is that we intend to put some of our station ambassadors at key stations like KL Central, like Masjid Jamek, like KLCC, so that when passengers come, whether yourself as Rakyat Malaysia or as tourists, will be able to ask our team on the ground, not just about transport matters, but about other matters around KL. So you have a fully immersed experience in Kuala Lumpur. In that regard, I thank you for your time. I hope this gives you a picture about Prasarana and its objectives for the longer term. And of course, I'm open to any questions later on. Thank you very much.
I hope the mic is working now. Is it working? All right. Thank you so much, Mohammed Ashri. You've given a very good presentation and a good insight into the future and what you're going to do for customer satisfaction, including safety, which I consider very important. Customers' experience is also in your agenda, and that's a very important issue to be addressed. I see a lot of people from the embassy. I see a packed crowd. It's question time now. As I said, please identify yourself and your organization. I'm opening the floor now to ask your questions. Mohammed Ashri? Okay. Right. Please. Anybody? The first one? Everybody looking so serious. Yeah, after that. No? Present. Okay. So I think a slight mistake was made here. The second speaker is Datuk Zarif Mohammed Ashri, the Chief Executive Officer of MRT Corporation Sdn Bhd. He oversees the construction of MRT's various rail line projects. May I ask you to speak?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning to all of you. First, I would like to thank Kesai for inviting me to the forum, and thank you also to Tan Sri Michael for inviting me as well. Thank you. Prasarana, as mentioned by Encik Azharuddin just now, we are working closely with the MRT Corp in the land public transport sector. And if you can see from the last slide of Encik Azharuddin, Prasarana is embarking on a game-changing initiative to redefine the service of land public transport here in Kuala Lumpur in Klang Valley, Prasarana is aiming to be the end-to-end transit and mobility ecosystem enabler. So by that means, Prasarana is not only looking at rail and buses, but also to integrate other personal mobilities, other things like Grab, e-hailing, probably car sharing as well into the future. As Prasarana embarked on that game-changing initiative, Amati Corp has been tasked to develop urban rail infrastructure that meets that requirement, that catalyzes the sustainability of the cities, and as well as that catalyzes the mobility of the people. So that's our main task. And to deliver that, we are working currently closely with Prasarana, especially on things that we can define together in the future. So I'd like to begin my presentation today with a bit of what we are currently doing. So in preparation for the future mobility, as Encik Azharuddin mentioned, we need to consider the design and build the ecosystem that encompass a lot of things. So in our planning for the future, we're looking at how we can use public transport to redefine the, for example, certain areas, or what we call urban regeneration of certain sectors and areas in Kuala Lumpur, giving our people better access to land and public transport. And at the same time, create new social nexus, okay, in our future projects, as well as become the impetus for the growth, for the businesses, for the growth of the businesses. And last but not least, we will also be mindful of how we can also capitalize on the future project to enhance the land value capture along the way. All this, we hope to create better multiplier impacts to the economy. In developing that, we are looking at various different sectors, and we are looking at, other than working together with the local authorities, we are also looking at how we can influence the supply chain. How can we influence also the industry development along the way? And how do we actually also build up or enhance skilled resources? And last but not least, how do we actually strategize our procurement in order to enable all these activities to happen? And if you look at this, planning for future project is not only about construction, but also about how to enhance the economic multiplier. So we talk about, in the future, we talk about how to seamlessly integrate, for example, shared mobility. How do we actually also integrate the multi-modal transport systems that we have? For example, in KL, in the future, there will be water taxi service. So how do we incorporate water taxi to also be part of the land public transport systems? How do we make sure that the future of land public transport system is actually eco-friendly? And how do we also fit in stuff like autonomous car, and probably autonomous bicycle or autonomous bike along the way? And last but not least, we have to design our project to be people-centric, because at the end of the day, it's the people that move around our network. So there is a need to change the paradigm. If you want to become a game changer in this sector, we need to change the paradigm from pure infrastructure construction development to become more holistic economic and social enhancement program that we design, that not only we move the construction industry, but we also need to move the entire ecosystems. And in the future, especially in Kuala Lumpur, in Klang Valley, we are positioning mass transit systems, be it LRT or MRT, to be the backhaul or backhaul line to carry people in masses. If you can look at the chart, you see that the red lines, solid red lines, are actually depicting the mass transit systems, be it LRT or MRT. And all other mobilities, including buses, taxis, e-hailing, and also personal mobility, autonomous car, will need to support that backhaul system. That's the vision that we have for Kuala Lumpur. That's the vision that we have put in under the Kuala Lumpur 2040 local plan. So in doing that, we have to look at what's the optimal alignment for us to be able to effect all these changes. And what do we need in order to create high value added economy? For example, the technology that we're going to use, where does it come from? How do we further develop the local technologies? We also need to look at how we develop our skilled Malaysian workforce. And we also need to think through about what are the long-lasting residual values to be generated. For example, once the project is completed, what are the residual values that our Malaysian companies and our Malaysian workers can build upon it to compete in the global arena? And we also need to be mindful that once the project is completed, we need to operate it, and it must be sustainable in terms of its operation. Yeah? So we're looking at also sustainable funding schemes as well. I would like to touch a bit on what we're currently doing on the MRT3. MRT3, as you all know, is actually still in the middle of plan, and we are at the final phase of its planning work. I can share with you a bit of what we are trying to do in MRT3. If you look at the first item, there will be an integrated multi-modal transit hub, okay, somewhere in north of Kuala Lumpur City. That will act as a game changer. That in this hub, we are looking at agglomeration or integration of 4 different rail lines, one inner city bus terminal, as well as a water taxi, that area. We're looking at a seamless connectivity, paid link and as well as unpaid link. We're looking at how to revamp the service of the inner city buses, especially to the CBD areas. We're looking at how to support the multi-modal hub through new sources of energy, renewable energy, how to make it sustainable and ESG compliance. We're looking at also to build a dedicated pedestrian walkway and cycle and bicycle lanes, along the way. We're looking at how to strengthen the hub with the green initiative. Looking at how to develop an all-in-one inclusive development, mixed use of residential as well as commercial as well as public spaces. And last but not least, also how to position that as a tourist extraction center, overseeing the river of life. So these are some of the bits that we are currently doing to ensure that once we plan for the future, this is what the future will look like. In addition to that, we are also looking at the technologies, how to localize certain rail technologies, how to design, how to localize certain spare parts, how to actually localize some of the rail system works. And we're looking at also how to develop pool of skilled Malaysian workforce that could basically be the launching pad for Malaysians to actually work in regional as well as international projects. And we are also in the next project that we were looking at is how can we catalyze the change of a construction industry, because as you know, the construction industry is sometimes it's pretty archaic and they are pretty set in their way of doing things. So we are pushing them to the limit now that, how can they deploy more technology solutions like BEAM as well as IBS, adopt more prefab and modular construction solutions, as well as collaborate among themselves in the cloud and as well as real systems, real-time collaboration. So we are pushing our industry players as well to change, to respond to these new things, or new paradigm shift. So we need to move away from our previously myopic view of building just a transport infra to more developing a transit project that is holistic. Yeah? And that is what we are looking forward to our next game-changing project. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed Ashri. That was refreshing to note. You're making so much of progress and you're taking climate control into consideration as well. And you're also talking about tourism, which would help the transportation and its economy in a big way. Thank you so much. The third speaker is Engineer Gary Ng, Construction Director of Malaysia Rail Link, Sinjan Berhad. He has 37 years of hands-on experience in railways, highways, and tunnel projects. May I ask, please?
Tan Sri, Datuk, and distinguished guests, very good morning to you, both those attend physically here on site and those online as well. Okay, as the previous two speakers share, a lot of all this LRT, MRT rail, which is one of these under construction, most of it already been completed. They're operating it, and for those that doesn't know, especially not from this country, there are various railways in this country. For this LRT, MRT, all this will be operated and run by Prasarana. MRT Corp is a company that actually helping the development, then they hand over the whole thing to Prasarana. And there another North-South railway and in all the traditional railway line in Malaysia, owned by KTMB, they are operated by KTMB. And now the project I'm involved in is called Ecrl. Ecrl is a project that links East Coast to the West Coast. And this project is under development and is still under development stage. And there's another company incorporated by Ministry of Finance to operate this, to develop this railway now. Later they will, what they call it, to operate it as well, operate and maintain it. And the background of this project is, this actually is a project by One Belt, One Road initiative by China. China loaned us money, our government come up with a certain percentage of it and to develop this project. And the project has been already, we started the project in 2016 and the government changed, there's some changes there, they re-signed the contract again, and now everything back to peak, and this year and next year will be peak construction. And there are two phases. One phase will be finished by December 2026, another phase will be December 2027. Since our project is only in the development stage, I will go through the slide. Generally, I cover more on construction aspect, and of course, a little bit of background or the intention of this project. Okay, the contents of my presentation is this: Ecrl planning history, how we plan it, the history of it. Then the key project features, what it consists of. Then construction experience, key challenges, because the Chinese from China, they come over here. There are a lot of culture kind of things that we face all the challenges. Then of course the practice and adoption of new technologies. Project showcase and case study, okay? I will go very fast, just like you're sitting on the train. Be ready, okay? Because I've given only 10 minutes to do that. Okay, this Ecrl plan history. You see, this project started in this part of the ECR initiative. ECR stands for East Coast Economic Region, which is the East Coast side, Sabah, Kelantan, Pahang, and Terengganu side, okay? So it's under the ECR plan to improve the connectivity between Malaysia, West and East Coast. So it's kind of a idea started that way, and railway is the best to open up the place there, okay? Okay, the planning history, feasibility studies start in 2010 to 14. Of course, the criteria for the alignment selection, economic factors, you got to Basically, the whole thing is open up the economy of the East Coast, so that's very important. Second one is technical. They must be constructible, topography, all these things. Then social environment, try to protect the environment, especially water courses and all these emission gases. And also the feedback from the shareholder, the stakeholder around the whole place. Okay. Okay, you see they are along the East Coast, different states, Kete, Kijau, Jugai, these places, they are industrial places, locality in Terengganu, not so much in Kelantan. Then, of course, Terengganu, everybody knows there's a lot of petrochemical, petrol. And Jukai, there will be a few, Jarating there will be a future international airport, and all this industry there, especially in Kuantan side, there's a main China, Malaysia industrial park, and the Kuantan port, all this. So all this linked to industrial in future, so to open up the area. So it's a game changer, open up economy, employment, and connectivity. Okay, the project consists of, you see the blue color one is Kelantan State. There are 2 stations there, they run to Terengganu, the brown color, Then after that, it connect to Kuantan side, Pahang side, then they come to Selangor side. It consists of, it crosses 4 states. Then on Selangor side, it ends up at Port Klang. Okay, the key features are, of course, this is a government project. So government of Malaysia appoint Malaysia Rail Link, which is the company that I work for, 100% owned by EPF. So this company actually doing development under the APAT, is the Ministry of Transport. They oversee the project. Of course, we got the ICE to help us in technical review. And this project, as I say, is a One Belt, One Road initiative. Exim Bank in China loan us 85% for the money. We come out another 15% of ourselves by issuing Sukuk bond. And Chinese contractor is because 4C, the famous 4C, one of the best, one of the top in the world. And they are China part and Malaysia part also. Okay, then they bring their own subcontractor as well. So this is the structure of the project. Okay. So we divide the project into section A, B, and C. In total, they are about 200 plus kilometer per package, per section. So altogether, about 644 kilometers. Okay, this is the features of standard railways project. They got station, they got control center, the track, signaling, electrification, and rolling stock and things like that. Of course, civil tunnel, viaducts, subgrade. Okay, so this is a double track. This is a double formation single track. We only build 1 track now, but we build all the infrastructure for future expansion another track. And electrified, the design speed is 180 kilometers per hour for passenger train, and for the freight train is 80. So designed for both. Oh, it doesn't move. Okay, sorry. We'll go back. Okay, this is the construction program. It finished in December 2027. And this is the connectivity part. You see the gray color one is the existing KTMP line. Run from Tumpat, is a beginning part of Kelantan, and come out ends up Kemas and Johor Bahru at the down there. So Kemas JB now, they're doing a double track now. Okay, the other one, gray color one is from Penang, Padang Besar, all the way down. Then it has to go through the city center KL before it go to Port Klang. And now the red color one is a project. Red color for Kotak Baru, we go all the way, and they integrate with the station at Temuro Station. So that means at Temuro Station there, you can integrate and change train to go to the north and go to the south. That's the connectivity part. When it comes to ITD Compound, there are all these LRT, Kelana Jaya Line, endpoint. It will connect from there, it come to KL Central. When it comes to KL Central, all the connectivity is there. LRT, MRT, monorail was all there. So that is the thing that, at Surrender side, all the traffic and cargo from the north Penang side, they come last time, presently they have to go to KL Central. Now by building a Surrender bypass, it will connect, go direct to port. So that will avoid the train cargo to go through the city center, which is dangerous. Sometimes you carry all these schedule ways and things like that. Okay, so this is the connectivity part. Okay. Currently, this is as January 2022. Now it's February. The progress is about 28%. Okay, and the challenges that we face, as I say, we go through 4 different states. 4 different states, of course, it's the same government, same what, but somehow the implementation part, there's a bit of what they call it. Different state may have different rules, but we iron out. and land acquisition is a problem, it's not easy, Then compliance of various authority approval. The culture part, you see China, when they come here, they are very, very good in design, but they are very bad in local authority compliance. They don't understand it, so these are something, it's a new thing to them. We try always to help them. Then the health, safety, environment, very stringent in this project. Okay, and technology, China brought some technology to this project. This is a TBM. In LRT, MRT, actually I involved in the LRT phase 1. All the underground was done by me from 1995 to 1998. So all the different kind of tunneling, Gamuda tunneling, MRT1, smart tunnel, all those are soft ground and shield tunneling. Okay, the TBM is different. This is rock tunneling. This is Robin, United States technology. The Chinese brought the machine, then they modified a bit to suit. Okay, so they bring this new technology here. To me, it's not really new, something that they so-called very sophisticated, but Malaysian, I think with the proper machine, we can do that as well. Okay, and of course, the tunnel experience, they have a different kind of bridges, T-beams, the way they set it, the way they build it, very mechanized, very robotic, and kind of productivity high. Okay? And they have a special launcher. The launcher that they use basically a bit different, but quite similar to the LRT, MRT launcher. No big deal, but they claim this is their so-called export technology. We just take it. The DSM, the last one, is the soil treatment. There are various treatment. This is one of the treatment that they adopt here. This is something that you can learn from them. Okay, there are 58 tunnels, different lengths of tunnels. The longest tunnels actually, altogether, they are 60 kilometers tunnel. That's the project. Our 644, that means 10% of the whole alignment is actually tunnels. 58 numbers. The longest one is Genting Highland there. Genting Tunnel, which is 16 kilometers long. There's another long one that Surrender. So the TBM that I showed you is for the Genting Tunnel. Okay, this is the one. The diameter is, we call it 9 meter diameter, to be precise, 8980 mm. Okay. And this is some of there are two methods of construction here for tunneling. One is drill and blast method, NATM, New Australian Tunneling Method. I think Australian is the best tunneler in the world. NATM, they drill, put explosive, they charge it, they blast it, they do temperature support, then they put waterproofing, then put the permanent lining. Then the TBM one is just a machine with the rotary kind of, what do you call it, motor, with some torque and cut the rock. Okay, some of the breakthrough, because as I say 50 tunnels, this is some of the breakthrough. The one in front of Datuk, Tan Sri KSN. Okay, he is our board chairman. So this is one of the tunnel that broke through on 9 April. There's another one breakthrough here. There are many coming, like 50 of them. And this TBM arrival on 4th July is a big event to us. This TBM 1, the TBM 2, they store in the port now. With these two TBM, this is the mechanized so-called real machine for track laying, which is China technology, as I say. This is the same one. Okay, this is the launching machine, just like our gantry here, but it's a bit unique. They got to go through the full subgrade tunnel, viaduct, run on it, So as a result, the planning of the work is very challenging. Okay. Okay, this is some of the DSM deep soil mixing is ground treatment. You have to treat the ground because East Coast, the ground generally are quite bad. All the paddy field, you got to treat the ground before you build the track on it. Okay. You see, for the whole world, you look at it, there are different category of rail. They call broad gauge, standard gauge, meter gauge. The blue color one in Malaysia, generally we use this standard gauge, like KTM. And then all the green color one, China, they use standard gauge, 1, 3, 4, 5 mm. And the red color one, they're broad gauge in Europe generally. So these are the different category of railway gauges in the world. Okay, for this particular Ecrl, you see from China, South China Sea there, basically from the north, connectivity from the north all the way down to Kuantan Port. From Kuantan Port, they cross to Port Klang. This is the connectivity. So they open up all the area. There will be different, as I say, transportation mode. You see now, currently now from KL to Kota Baru, it takes 12 to 15 hours. KL to Tumpat, it takes 15 hours by KTM train. When the Ecrl done with 4 hours. So this basically will change the life of the people there, the way they live, the economy. Maybe they come to KL to work more. Okay, of course, where you got to preserve the environment. So when we try to avoid realignment, get a proper alignment the first time. Second time we build tunnel. When you build tunnel, everything untouched. Yeah, a bit more expensive, but everything untouched, So environment preserved. Then for this, we even have some crossing for the animal to cross. Because a wildlife management plan, they put CCTV there to capture the behavior of the animals. So they construct proper sizes of passages for the animals. So very human in our country. So this is some of the construction photograph that I want to show you. This is what is going on now. There are a few hundred places, working area in the project now. Okay, so this is some of it. This is some of it, So we got tunnel, we got all the ground treatment thing, you got concreting. This is quite common. Okay, this is section 4A, section 4B, section 5, section 6, okay, section 7. Okay, sorry, I'll go back to this. Okay, this is the TBM at the bottom left corner. This is a TBM. When they come in pieces now, they assemble it. By middle March, the Prime Minister is going to visit there to witness the first time this TBM going to go inside the tunnel, start the excavation, rock excavation. And this is the only, I would say this will be the longest rock tunneling machine or project in whole Malaysia history. Okay, that's all I have. I'll go very fast as I say. So I hope I don't say so much on the economy impact, things like that. But generally from there you can see open up the economy that side, people change the cycle, game changer in that sense. Of course, because of initiative, government initiative, we employ the unemployed graduate. Then we have a special training program for the non-technical and technical people, work together with the Chinese contractor. So all this program is government initiative thing. We're doing all these things, open up employment, economy, a lot of trainings. Okay, I hope you all enjoy and learn something. You can ask me any question you like during the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. That was very interesting. We learned a lot about the project. I realize this is the time for you all to ask questions. I open the floor. Feel free, whatever you want to ask. The experts are here. Thank you. Anyone from the floor?
Hi, I'm Shazing from MIT Corp. Just wanted to ask the leaders out there, as you know, decarbonization is a core, and how do you link being sustainable and all this green economy association initiative with affordability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. If I understand the question correctly, is that how do you balance between sustainability efforts and also with affordability? Now that's, I would say, a very delicious question. When I say delicious, this is hard to comprehend and really need to think through. The reason being is that sustainability itself is a very big agenda. And it's not just about reducing carbon emissions, but it is actually talk about a whole way of doing new things. So when we talk about, let's say, I gave an example of electric vehicles just now. It's not just putting electric vehicles on the road. It's also getting the supply of the fuel. Is it from coal-based? Is it natural gas? Or is it from renewables? How do you then put in charging stations along the way that enable sustainability options to happen, or renewables fuel to happen? Then how do we then do with the materials, the parts, etc., that sort of thing? So all these things need to be think through. And of course, I think you've rightly pointed out, it's how do we afford all this? Because it's very expensive. And that is the dilemma that we all as policymakers we need to deal with. But what is clearly important for us actually is that we cannot not do sustainability. Certainly it has costs, But as you can see, in the incidents that happened, the thunderstorms and the rain that's happened in December, one may argue is reflection of what has happened due to climate change. And if we as a community don't do anything about reducing our carbon footprint, then certainly our nation is at risk, our generations ahead will be at risk. Now, how do we manage that with affordability? Now, in that context, and I'm not an expert in that particular area, but the financing part, we have many green funds now being developed. Many banks or many institutional investors are looking at how we look at in a greener way, on a sustainable way. So in that regard, finding a balance between the intent to make change and getting the support from our financial institutions to deliver that change is actually important. For real, I think at the shareholder level or at the, when you're a listed company, you'll be judged on your quarterly performance. But more and more, there is what we call a holistic performance rather than your financials. So I think the society as a whole, the institutional investors, the country has to look at, in terms of development of growth, in a more holistic manner. I hope that answers your question, actually. Thank you.
Next question, anybody?
Okay. For that question, sustainability versus affordability. In my opinion, especially for public transport, like railway especially, there's no railway project, as far as I know, there's no railway project in the world until this point of time that make money. Okay? Because the initial capital cost is very, very high. If you trade it like a investment kind of thing, you invested this amount of money, then you got to borrow bank, then you got to pay back the money with interest. Whatever revenue is generated, basically from the fare is not much. The public, when you charge a little bit more, they will complain. They won't take your public transport. Okay. Number two is other revenue like all the advertisement and all things like that. They won't paint the whole train with all the company logo and things like that. And now the new concept is TOD, transit-oriented development. They buy land around during development around the station, then they develop it so that there's a good revenue for that. In fact, the LRT station, the first Deng Wangi station, was built in 1995. Already, foundation already been built. There are 4 stations, so that they can extend higher story, build some kind of supermarket on top. That's where they generate income. But even with that, also cannot make. You think Singapore making money running very efficiently? No, because the government built the whole thing and passed it to them at zero cost. They just run the operation. So in this kind of aspect, if you want to run this kind of public transport, this affordability not there. I mean, those has to be come from the government subsidies. Just like $50 per month thing. Government come out 150 million to subsidize it. So this is the thing that is the responsibility of the government to the taxpayer. They pay tax. This is the money go back to the public. The highway different. Highway you make plenty of money. Like not some highway because the toll collection. Those are what they call it, viable business. But for railway, no. Very difficult. I don't think any railway in the world making money now. Even the Europe, what they call it, this UK, France, Euro Channel, they got bankrupt within 2 years. They try to run it like a commercial private entity. Thank you.
Okay. I hope that answers your question. Next.
Thank you, Datuk. I'd like to ask Dr. Zarif, since I think many people in the hall from embassies and many companies who are interested in the progress and development of MRT3, could you perhaps give us some timelines as to when MRT Corp will be calling for tenders, opening tenders for the construction of the civil works package and all the other related packages for MRT3? I think many embassies here are, I think, probably interested to be updated on that as well. Thank you, Datuk.
All right, thank you, Tan Sri. First and foremost, RMRT3 currently is actually being finalized. As I mentioned in my previous press release, that the government is finalizing the funding plan. We are looking at the final version now of the funding plan. Obviously, we've gone through so many different iterations of the funding plan and also as project costing. We've come to the landing point right now. So it's being deliberated and finalized. So I would say we're very, very close to the to the line, to the finishing line. However, I will not be able to announce formally, officially about RMRT3 at this point of time, because the government will also need to be mindful about the funding plan for the other projects as well. As you mentioned, as you would appreciate that, we have Pan Borneo projects that both sites, Sabah and Sarawak sites. These two projects are still ongoing and it needs to be funded as well. Secondly is the government is trying to also find ways to fund flood mitigation projects to avoid the recurrence of the recent flooding experience. So government is also looking seriously into that at the moment. And as well as the government is also looking at ways to help the rakyat to ease the burden of the rakyat due to the cost of increasing cost of living. So all this being considered at this moment, and you would appreciate that the government is under tremendous pressure right now to sort this thing out. So I would like to urge you to give them a bit more time, because it's not a simple issue that they have to juggle, and they have to make a lot of consideration. And hopefully, I would say, in the next couple of weeks, we will be able to hear some good news. Regardless, I would like to inform the floor that the government is still committed to do the RMRT3 project, because RMRT3 is seen as one of the catalysts for economic rejuvenation for the country. As I have mentioned to you, it is not only about the construction, it is about future mobility, it's about sustainability of the cities, it's also about urban regeneration, it's also about building social nexus, it's also about building local technologies, it's also about enhancing the local skill workforce. So under the RMRT3 initiative, there are lots of economic programs that goes along with the construction project. So it is seen as a strategic initiative, and the government is still committed to do this project. If everything goes well, and hopefully things can be settled down a bit by the second half of this year, so hopefully we can look more towards the second half of this year for RMRT3 activities to start. I would say let's look at the second half of this year to be a bit reasonable. You can also appreciate the fact that there are a lot of some political uncertainties that still exist today. So if preferably you would want to make sure that that is settled first before we embark on any major initiative, and hopefully but as a whole the government is still committed. But let's look at, in terms of our preparation work, let's look at the second half of this year. That means July onwards. So the good side of that is because we still have time. We still have time. Now it's coming up to end of February, and we look at July, so we have about 4 months and 4 months and a half left. So there's a lot of time still for us, the industry players, to engage with MRT Corp, as well as to engage with all the other partners within the industry, to discuss and the next steps and how to prepare for this project. So On the hindsight is we still have 4 months, extra 4 months to prepare ourselves. Thank you, Tan Sri.
Sure. Just to respond to Tan Sri Maki's query, my colleague Datuk Zarif responded timeline. From an operator point of view, and we've given our views to the government, the why we need to do MRT3. I think it's absolutely important that MRT3 is completed. And obviously, we leave it to the government to decide on the right timing as they need to balance the national budget. But in our view, MRT3 is critical because it completes the railway line for Kuala Lumpur. It is like a circle line in many other cities, whether in London they call it circle line, even in Singapore, where it connects with all rail lines across the city, whether LRT, whether MRT Kajang line, Putrajaya line, monorail, KTM, even ECRL, hopefully in the matter, I think that line is being planned through. So in that regard, the MRT3 is so critical towards achieving the 40% model share that we aspire by 2030. In that regard as well, as we build that MRT3 line when it happens, Prasarana is also looking to improve what we term as feeder bus connectivity. There's a struggle now, I think that struggle is real, about enticing people to take public transport to the feeder bus. And how do we make it more interesting? More interesting when I say that, the service that people want to take it. And I recall the facts, and I get a lot of comments from the communities. They recall, and many of you will remember, the bus minis of the world 20, 30 years ago, where it provided efficient service, not necessarily safe, but efficient service. We aspire, we understand the need to have on-demand services. That's important to connect to the rail lines. And here we're talking whether we have long buses or what we term as midi buses, 8-meter bus. That goes down to the communities, goes down to the neighborhood, and provide services for our school children, for our parents, etc., to drive around, to move around freely. So that's an important part, a component of when MRT3 is decided, and hopefully soon, then Prasarana will then be able to think the bigger picture on how that whole network, public transportation, is complete for Kuala Lumpur. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri Michael, for asking that good question. And thank you for the response from Dr. Mohammed Ashri and Mohammed Ashri. Yes. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I would like to ask for the industrial angle, is it Ecrl is linked to the inland port?
Okay, there are few inland port, basically one at Bangi. And currently, there's no inland port in Ling because the alignment been changed back to the northern alignment. But a Saranda area, there will be like cargo hub from the north. From the north, we meet at Saranda. Then from Kuantan, we meet there. So they sort out everything there. And there's another one that we have a few spur line at the east coast side, one to Kemaman, one to Kete, one to Kuantan Port. So the spur line there also, they may also consider talking about those petrochemical, Petronas kind of thing. So they may have some kind of this inland port. But that inland port is not under our jurisdiction. So it has to get separate fund from MOF. Has to be separately deal with. Of course, which is much better. All this by rail, the inland port will be all the different kind of cargoes or small things. They can go to the inland port, collect it, then put it in the container and do it. I think there's one at Ipoh, inland port KTMB has it. Those cargo from they collect before they send to Lumut. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see a lot of diplomats. Do they have any questions from foreign embassies? If there's no questions, then I'd like to close this session. Thank you so much, speakers. You've heard experts speaking. And I myself have learned a lot. It opened up so much opportunities for me as well as for you all to know what the transportation system is in Malaysia and how the game changing is taking place. Malaysia is doing very well in having these experts, operators who are doing a good job. We thank you for asking your questions, and in summary, I think this was a good session. So I take this opportunity to once again thank you all and close.